Hello everyone, and thanks for hanging out with us for the Behind the Numbers Weekly Listen, an e-marketer podcast made possible by New Star. This is The Friday Show that reviews the most important media news stories of the week. I'm your host, Marcus Johnson. In today's show, Facebook went down, so what?
The outage had just an effect, not just on, one person in one country, but it was a global impact that was felt all over.
Searching for virtual reality's dopamine rush.
B2B applications aren't as sexy as the metaverse may be, but it might be where the value of VR lies in the near future.
Marketers' optimism.
So much is happening and it's so fluid that it's so hard for marketers to know what to do, especially because they're developing their campaigns well before the news cycle changes.
New AR sunglasses for binging TV. How to prevent your employees from burning out. And why there's still some hope for humans yet. All right, folks, we are joined by three people for today's episode. Let's meet them. We start with Susie David Canyon, who is one of our principal analysts covering everything retail.
Hey, everyone.
Hey, Susie. I've got to tell you guys right up front, Susie, she did not prep for this episode at all. She asked for access to the articles 5 minutes before recording, just to show you how seriously she doesn't take this episode. So,
not nice.
Just feel like people
so
should know
mean.
that. Anyway, we're also joined by Rahu, who is one of our directors of reports editing.
Hey, guys.
Hey, chap. He did prep. We like him. And then finally, we have Oscar Roscoe, who's one of our directors of forecasting.
Hey, Marcus. Thanks for having me.
Hey, chap. What's going on? Still a Bulls fan, so we like him, kind of. So,
That's right.
what have we got in store for you for today's episode? Well, we start with the story of the week. We're talking about Facebook and the fact that went down earlier on. How can we not talk about that? We move to the game of the week where our contestants, Rahul, Susie, and Oscar, will go head to head to give us the best takeaways they possibly can from each of the four stories we have for you. We then move to working from somewhere. We're going to be talking about how to help employees prevent burnout. And then finally, dinner party data. We talk about random things we just recently learned. That's the show that we've got for you. We start with the first quarter. Story of the week, Facebook went down. So what? On Monday, Facebook went dark around the world and everything that it owns, Instagram, Messenger, and WhatsApp. Jane Wakefield, technology reporter for the BBC, explains that when you want to visit Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, those properties, the back-end system that allows computers to connect with their network uses the Border Gateway Protocol, the BGP. It's a kind of postal service for the internet. In order to direct people to the websites they want to visit, BGP looks at all the available paths that data could travel and picks the best route. On Monday, Facebook suddenly stopped providing the information the system needed to function. Facebook said sorry for the roughly 6-hour-long outage and blamed a quote-unquote faulty configuration change, saying there is no evidence that user data was comprised as a result of the outage. So, folks, I'll ask you for your biggest takeaway from this Facebook outage.
For me, I had to start by kind of contextualizing it. Marcus, I love to talk about our forecasts when I can. Yep. I looked into some of them. Worldwide Facebook ad revenues, we predict that they will reach almost 108 billion this year. So if you average that out over a whole year, that's almost $500 million lost in ad revenues. That's potentially what could have happened yesterday.
Wow.
We forecast that there are over 2 billion worldwide Facebook users, 1.1 billion Instagram, WhatsApp from 1 to 2 billion. It's massive. The outage had just an effect, not just on, one person in one country, but it was a global impact that was felt all over. And so it's a big deal. When you say, so what, I say, this was massive, Marcus. This was massive. Something we have to chat more about.
On the revenue side of things, that's interesting. I appreciate you looking at those numbers. There was one calculation from Miss Wakefield of the BBC asking how much money has Facebook lost here, rising that perhaps the biggest issue for Facebook itself would have been the effect to its revenue and its stock price. The shutdown meant ads were not served for those over 6 hours across the platforms. According to some, the outage could have wiped as much as $6 billion, 4 billion British pounds from Mr. Zuckerberg's personal wealth. Shares of the company fell nearly 5%. Others estimate the loss of revenue to the company could amount to over $60 million or 2% of their Q2 revenue. So maybe they don't notice. The stock price dropping kind of seemed as though a regular kind of up and down stock price fluctuation. It didn't indicate anything as dramatic as being shut down for 6 hours. It does make you wonder, had they been shut down for longer, what the ramifications could have been, 2-3 days, a week perhaps, and what that could do to the world, given that, Oscar, to your point, so many people use Facebook. Richard Drew of the Associated Press noting that Facebook's family of apps reaching around 3.5 billion users. And this kind of showed that despite the presence of Twitter, Telegram, Signal, TikTok, Snapchat, and others, nothing can easily replace the social network that over the past 17 years, Facebook has effectively evolved into critical infrastructure for both people and businesses. Susie, we were messaging on IM earlier this week as this was taking place, saying we're going to have to talk about this. Your thoughts?
I think most people don't realize just how big that infrastructure is, that Facebook, the ecosystem, and that it helps businesses conduct their business, but it also helps people stay connected to one another. And it's everything from information sharing. And for many, it's a place where they get news, which makes me laugh because it's probably not the best place to get news, but it's where many do get their news. But it's also a place where there are a lot of transactions. So not only were advertising dollars lost, but there were a lot of mom and pop boutiques that were trying to sell their wares on Facebook or Instagram and weren't able to complete the purchases because it went down. So it's a big deal. In retail, it was a big deal. Social commerce is important. So big impact.
Yeah. On the news point, about 40 to 45, I think it was about 45%. Pew Research just had some numbers on how many Americans get their news from social media. And I think Facebook, about 45%-ish of Facebook users get their news from Facebook. So yeah, big source of news. Rahul, your takeaway?
I think, it's kind of what Susie said. It's like kind of amazing how much of our technology and or just online behaviors, I guess, in many markets aside from the US are underpinned by Facebook's technology. I think when Facebook's in the news these days, it's bad news for Facebook. They just have an ongoing PR problem. I think Kevin Roos, New York Times columnist, talked about or described earlier this week Facebook as a company that's in decline. But, this just underscores how difficult it is for, I think, marketers or any other businesses or people who conduct their business via Facebook somehow to untangle themselves from the platform. It's just seems like close to impossible for a lot of people. These companies are dependent on Facebook still for things like customer acquisition and to drive sales, and they were all left in the lurch. I think another thing that was noted in one of the articles you sent over, which was interesting, is like, what does this actually mean for the antitrust concerns that the FTC has been raising with Facebook? It's like when Facebook goes down and it shuts down effectively aspects of the internet, is that a good argument to support the idea that they're a monopoly? I'm definitely not an antitrust expert, but it was an interesting idea that they noted.
Rahul, it's an interesting point. I thought a lot about, when the electricity goes down or phone lines, which we've all dealt with, obviously on a much more localized scale. But that in the past, we're talking decades ago, did lead to much more regulation, much more trust busting. So I think that it makes a ton of sense for there to be more conversations about regulation. And we always hear about this first from Europe. So we'll see if it has an impact here in the US in the coming months.
So the devil's advocate in me would say, and one of the articles talked about the British aides from the parliament sessions who had to turn to SMS, and they were so sad that they couldn't use WhatsApp. And so I feel like there are lots of different potential platforms. It's just that Facebook has found a way from a marketing perspective to monopolize, right? But there are other avenues for communication, including TikTok and Twitter and a bunch of other platforms. So I don't know exactly where they'll land with that monopoly type legislation.
Right. It's just become, the behaviors have become so entrenched that people kind of froze and said, all right, if I can't use WhatsApp, what do I use? How do I get in contact with people? How do I communicate? It's particularly internationally. Carlos Campbell of The Verge was writing that losing Facebook was bad, losing WhatsApp was worse, pointing out that WhatsApp has over 2 billion worldwide users. Original Facebook has 2.5 billion. Facebook is important to folks, but WhatsApp has become the default method to contact people in plenty of countries, noting that in India, about 400 million monthly users use the service, according to Bloomberg. Oscar, I know from talking to you that you use WhatsApp to communicate with family outside of the US. So had this been a sustained period of time, especially if people were in any kind of emergency. Maybe they really needed to communicate with family at that precise moment. Again, it was only 6 hours, but depending on the context, it could have had pretty serious ramifications.
Absolutely. And, my thoughts, you mentioned it a bit there, were with the emerging markets, right? You mentioned India, LATAM, Africa, definitely with WhatsApp, where these are basic services. We touched on it. They allow people to make money and for their daily sort of communication. And so it was a major deal, especially in the emerging markets. WhatsApp absolutely going down. You talked about the scale of it. It was incredible. And so I think overall, what I was also going to add was it was interesting how this came out right after that 60 minutes interview with the whistleblower. Yeah. I was wondering, I'm not one to be very conspiratorial here, but if anyone thought if there was some connection there.
It's incredibly unfortunate timing on Facebook's part. Yeah. So Rahu mentioned the antitrust concerns. Oscar's mentioning the fact that Facebook's currently in the midst of a separate major crisis. The whistleblower, former Facebook product manager Frances Haugen, gave the Wall Street Journal internal documents that exposed the company's awareness of harms caused by its products and decisions. She was on 60 Minutes, as Oscar explained. She also testified this week in front of a Senate subcommittee. For me, folks, though, I think the most accurate takeaway is one that Ian Bogost of The Atlantic had posited in the title of his piece, which he titled "A Day Without Facebook, the Social Giant's Temporary Disappearance Means Absolutely Nothing." And I think that's kind of fair. We mentioned that revenue-wise, nothing will change. Advertisers aren't going to go anywhere. Users won't, because the same way when, flights get grounded, he was saying, you don't decide, I'm only going to drive from now on. Flights can't be trusted. You just wait for the delays. You wait for the backlog to clear and you continue to fly. Some of the articles noting this has been the worst outage for Facebook since 2019. So just 2 years ago, that incident took the site offline for over 24 hours. So this was nothing of that scale in terms of length, at least. But we could expect more of these. And I'm very interested to see what happens if it does go down for a sustained period of time, longer than a couple of hours. That's what we've got time for the story of the week. It's time now for the game of the week. But first, a quick word from our sponsor, Newstar. Are you prepared for marketing's next chapter? You won't want to miss Brave New World's 2021, the virtual marketing and analytics event of the year on November 9th and 10th. Join Brave New Worlds to learn how you can adapt to the forces redefining advertising. It's free, and you'll hear from today's top minds in marketing, data, and analytics, including executives from Facebook, General Motors, Capgemini, Publicis, and more. Go to bravenewworlds.newstar to register today. Folks, we are back. It's time now for the game of the week. Today's game, what's the point? Part of the show where we read out 4 stories and have our contestants, Rahul, Susie, and Oscar, tell us what they think is the main takeaway of the story. Okay answers get 1 point. Good answers get 2. Slightly better than good answers get 3 points. Each person gets 20 seconds to answer before they hear this. Whoever has the most points after 4 rounds wins and gets the last word. We'll start with Oscar, top left. VR's dopamine rush. Mr. Heffelfinger, a 48-year-old musician, entrepreneur, and free spirit, has a decade-long obsession with VR. Since the arrival of the seminal Oculus headset in 2013, he's played games in VR, watched movies, visited distant lands, and assumed new identities, searching for the next dopamine hit, writes Cade Metz of the New York Times. But when will VR be truly ready for mainstream consumers? Improvements have never quite matched expectations, setting up folks for perpetual disappointment. Brian Walsh of Axios offers that VR is more likely to be used for the moment on job training, be that NFL quarterbacks to Walmart sales associates. And truly, Derek Belch, CEO of VR training company Striver, notes that VR could help athletes practice their sport without needing their teammates or putting themselves at risk of injury. Football GOAT Tom Brady began using Striver before his Super Bowl winning season with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last year. So, Oscar, VR's dopamine rush, or the search for that, what's the point?
I do think that given the pandemic, that would have made sense as the optimal time for something like this to really grow exponentially. It really hasn't happened, but I'm a little bit less of a skeptic than most. I really think it comes down to use cases and applications. So at the moment, it's really more of an entertainment thing, video games, video, right? But if we can see that expand into industries like healthcare, retail and auto, for example, I really feel like this could pick up some steam and grow. I'd say last thing, we actually have numbers on VR users. We say 18% of the population is a VR user. That can very much grow. But again, it comes back down to applications.
And that's VR in general, not VR headset.
VR in general, yeah.
Okay.
Headsets is about 50% of that number.
Right. Susie?
I agree completely. I think, although I'm adding a little bit of what I'm taking away from what Oscar said, in that I think it's still a little bit too sci-fi. It's hard for the general population to grasp exactly how to use. What I do want to point out, which is tied back to Facebook, is in the article, it said that Facebook is spending $50 million on metaverse research, which they think is roughly equivalent to 4 hours of revenue. So that might also help us with the 6-hour outage to sort of quantify what that would look like. But I think it's definitely the right brand and the right situation with the right consumer could work. I just don't know that we've gotten there yet.
Rahul?
Yeah, my favorite quote from the first article was the guy who said, "It turns out that a walk outside is much more fun." I think we talked about VR before. It's like the headsets are heavy, they're hot, they're constrained by battery limitations. I think VR for a consumer-facing application, it really needs a killer app that'll drive mass adoption. And even then, honestly, when I was thinking about it, I'm not sure it'll stick. I was thinking about how Pokemon Go is supposed to be the heralding of, the mass adoption of, augmented reality. And I remember, I think Niantic was a game developer who was supposed to put out a Harry Potter game following Pokemon Go, which didn't seem to gain any steam at all. And right now, I just feel like I don't remember the last time Pokemon Go was talked about unless, it led somebody to wander into the path of a bus.
Right.
The thing I think is interesting is the potential for VR, like Oscar mentioned, is the shift to different applications that aren't consumer facing. And I think the precedent for this is Google Glass. That was supposed to be a consumer facing device, or that's how it was kind of initially launched in the world. And now it's really used for manufacturing and industrial purposes, or at least that's how Google markets it on their website. The B2B applications aren't as sexy as the metaverse may be, but it might be where the value of VR lies in the near future.
Yeah.
Did you guys get the part about how he thought he was on a date with a woman that he already knew?
Oh, gosh. That
was my favorite part of the article.
Mine too. It was just funny. They should put that post on Reddit somewhere. There's probably a good channel for it.
But yeah, Rahul, I agree with you. Him saying that, walk outside is better. It did feel like he was coming out of recovery and that he was there, with the person who'd helped him through recovery. And it's like, good job, Phil. You did it. Like, he'd come out the other end.
It was all absurd. That whole article was absurd, and it was too long.
It was quite bizarre. Yeah. It was too long. Susie, you didn't even open the article. What do you mean it was too long? You couldn't even access the article. Why are you lying to America?
If I knew that it was $50 million for 4 hours, then clearly I read that one article. It's the only one I read. Everything else is because I'm so smart.
I'm not feeding you any lines on Slack anymore.
Yeah. She's got it on the black market. 2 things from me. A 2020 PwC study found VR learners 4 times more focused than e-learning students and nearly 300% more confident in applying skills after training. That was from the Axios article. And then also, learning aside, some other cool examples, VR could be used to investigate a crime scene without being there. I thought that was pretty cool. We move to our second round. We start with Susie, marketer's optimism. At the start of August, Insider Intelligence analyst Nina Getson wrote that optimistic ad campaigns are looking iffy as the world enters a third wave of COVID-19. A month later, she wrote a piece headlined, "Marketers' optimism hits a high, but the Delta variant casts a shadow." She goes on to say that marketers' optimism hit its highest point since 2015 recently, with an overall rating of 69.6 out of 100, 70 out of 100, in August 2021 per the CMO survey by Duke University's Fuqua School of Business, Deloitte, and the American Marketing Association. Susie, marketers' optimism, what's the point?
So I think this is really tricky, right? The news headlines, no matter what news outlet you're listening to, are so mixed. And on some days, everything is positive, and the same concept like inflation, some say it's bad, some say it's good, it's going to impact this, it's not going to impact it. So I think so much is happening and it's so fluid that it's so hard for marketers to know what to do, especially because they're developing their campaigns well before the news cycle changes. And so I think depending on the day or the week, there is optimism. That just depends on when you catch them.
Rahu.
Yeah, the first thing I thought of actually was a planning meeting that Susie and I actually had with an e-commerce analyst at the company, Andrew Lipsman, who's writing a report about the holiday retail outlook, and he's very bullish on it, which was kind of a surprise to me, and I was kind of pushed back on him against. But, I'm working on his report right now, and he talks about how, holiday retail is expected to be driven by low unemployment, rising wages, a booming stock market, and government stimulus. These are all factors that he thinks are going to contribute to the swell of spending. It's like Susie said, there are just a lot of mixed signals out there. And the challenge for marketers is that's not going to go away anytime soon. The effects of Delta or the coronavirus pandemic are going to still remain, I think, unknown. And trying to generate creative that doesn't seem woefully out of date as soon as you make it is just going to remain a problem for them. I don't see how they can solve that in the problem in the short term.
Okay, Blake's not here. You guys may have noticed. I thought we were going to have a clean game, but I have to issue Rahul with a yellow card for running along on his answers. They're brilliant, but they're a little bit too long.
Sorry.
Oscar, what you got?
There's definitely uncertainty out there. Back to normal campaigns, sure, they make sense. Pandemic messaging is weighing on consumers, but it's way too soon. I don't know, thinking back to the last section, maybe marketers have their VR headsets on too long and not in reality. So I think that might be what's going on here. But again, they should just focus on flexibility, adaptability, measurability, things that they've been doing for a while, and just shifting more to digital media.
Nina notes 2 reasons for sustained optimism, though. 1, COVID-19 cases have finally begun to dip from their latest peak. According to Johns Hopkins University, the 7-day average of new cases reached 150,000 mid-September. 3 weeks on, it's down to 100,000. That's still a lot of cases, but certainly lower from 150 to 100 in 3 weeks. Thousands, that is. Number 2, pedestrian foot traffic is bouncing back. According to retail insights platform Springboard, Labor Day weekend had the slimmest discrepancy, she notes, in traffic since the beginning of the pandemic, with foot traffic in downtown areas on September 5th being only 14% less than in 2019, boding well for the upcoming Black Friday weekend. Round 3, we start with Rahul. Augmented reality company Nreal, I think that's how it's said, is launching a cheaper iOS-compatible, more compact version of its smart glasses. The new Nreal Air glasses are supposed to ship starting in December of this year across Asian markets, Japan, China, South Korea. No one knows the price yet, but Nreal says that they're going to be a lot less than the pair of glasses they launched previously, the Nreal Light glasses, which started at around $600. They're going to be able to project a virtual big screen display in front of your eyes. And if multiple wearers of the glasses get together, then they can watch a shared virtual theater and watch the same media at the same time. So, Rahul, new AR sunglasses for binging TV. What's the point?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I mean, it seems like from a functional perspective, their main, the company's main value prop of the device is that, hey, you can binge watch content on these glasses. Again, it just kind of goes back to what we were talking about with AR. I'm not sure there's a killer app yet that's going to drive widespread adoption of this thing. If maybe, unless you're like experiencing Zoom fatigue and want to be able to binge watch Grey's Anatomy while you're stuck in a meeting that you don't really shouldn't have been invited to. I'm not sure really what the value is here.
Oscar.
Yeah, reading the fine print, there was 2 issues for me, more on the technical front. It said that they worked with some iOS devices, not all of them. That's going to be a problem. This needs to work with all devices. But sort of on that line, they need to be tethered to a device, which I think is an issue too. These devices need to be, these AR sunglasses need to be completely wireless and Wi-Fi enabled, and they're not. So, I'm not so sure how that's going to work out.
Susie.
I totally agree that it's a friction-full experience. And I don't understand, when did we get rid of the IMAX glasses? I mean, that was so easy to use. But I also don't know that I need those glasses to binge watch TV. What I need is good programs, good content, good TV shows for us to have a shared experience with, kind of like what we were talking about last time I was on, how there are some TV shows which one was it that we were talking about? Ted Lasso and a few others, and obviously Bachelor in Paradise and Bachelor Nation that bring people together without the AR, VR glasses. So that's a no for me.
In the spirit of keeping with full transparency, Susie did not read this article either. She's just now learning about these glasses with you guys.
Oh, yeah, I forgot to talk about how I had watched the video so carefully.
You have not watched. She didn't watch the video. Okay. Continues to lie to the public.
Okay, I have a really good data for the data party business, so don't you worry about it.
We'll see.
Be ready. Be ready to be embarrassed.
Be somewhat ready. You don't worry, folks. You'll be plenty ready for what she has. We'll move to our final round. We'll start with Oscar, future-proofing your marketing. Gabrielle Bianese of Inc.com looked at how executives from Square and Honor Roll Clothing are preparing marketing efforts for the long term. She highlights 3 things. 1, merging digital and in-person experiences, saying that companies could help consumers use QR codes to submit orders, not just review menus. 2, communicating with customers differently, meeting customers where they are, podcasts, text messages, social media, and connecting with them in less sales-driven ways. And 3, honing your voice, figuring out how to sell your brand, not just a hoodie. So, Oscar, future-proofing your marketing, what's the point?
I agreed with the first one, which is the QR code. I think it has a ton of potential. We've been talking about QR codes for a long time here. But I had a few ideas. I mean, I think businesses could potentially, to increase engagement and make them more fun, include promotions, have a loyalty point system if it's like a retailer, or even if it is a business or a restaurant, have kind of extra hidden items that you only see if you're scanning and not looking at the actual menu. So a lot you can do with QR codes. I'm excited about them.
Yeah, I like that idea. If you sat down at a table and maybe certain QR codes offer you like a free dessert and you just happen to sit at the right table, things like that.
That's a good idea.
Susie.
You know how we're quoting lines from the different articles that we didn't read? So my favorite one this one was how at the end they're like, to stand out, that's what you have to do. That you have to stand out as a brand and don't be boring. And I'm like, that's the whole marketer ethos, right? It's like, how do you stick to your core values and stick to your mission and find your core customers to communicate with them? So I found the article a little bit blah. She is not wrong, the author, in that we do need to think of digital and physical coming together and taking, now the consumers have adopted things that are frictionful like QR codes, taking those to the quote unquote next level of experience. Now that they're using them, how do we move them further along that use case? I love that idea, Oscar, of the special coupons or other reasons why you would use the QR code versus going back to a paper menu.
Rahul.
I mean, I don't think there is a way to future-proof your marketing. If there were, we wouldn't sell our reports on advertising and marketing to anybody. But I think there is some fundamental advice here that's good, which is, be customer-centric. If QR codes or something or some other new technology eases the customer journey and makes it more seamless, don't be afraid to dabble. Meet your customers where they are. If those marketing channels are a text or a podcast, then yeah, you should be thinking about getting involved in content creation or figuring out how to use SMS. And to hone your voice, I think it's just what Susie said, that's core idea to your brand identity. And if you haven't figured that out, then you're in a lot more trouble than worrying about the future. You should be worrying about the present, I think.
That's all we've got time for the game of the week. This week's winner. A drum roll. Suspenseful voices. Oscar is this week's winner of the game of the week. For coming to the table with a couple of examples, a couple of thoughts of his own. What's he cooking up in that kitchen?
5-0, huh? 5-0.
5-0.
It was back to the fantasy football conversation.
Yeah, to folks listening. Was this pre-recording or just so folks know, Oscar's 4-0 in his fantasy football league. He's very excited. He's never won more than 2 games in a season. So he is doing very well, all things considered. It probably won't last. Let's not. Actually, I was kidding. I'm his assistant coach. We've got it this year. Yeah, we've got it in the bag.
We got it. Come on, you gotta support.
Yeah. This is way more important than fantasy football, and the fact that you put it in the same category I find offensive. But you did win this week's game of the week, which gives you the championship belt instantly. There's a massive chance you're not going to win that in fantasy. I hate to say it. But you do get 30 seconds of airtime. What would you like to tell us?
Was this the last? Wait.
No. This is the segment that this is the part of the show no one prepares for, even though it's been on the show for 3 years. This is the part of the show where when you win,
Oh, Lord.
You win the championship belt. And what I thought when I came up with this idea was, people, maybe they want to tell folks something, maybe a forecast they worked on, a report, a podcast they listened to, a book they just read, a film. No one remembers that this is their 30 seconds of free airtime. They always forget about it.
I always forget.
No, if I won, I would use the time wisely.
Susie, come on, let's be real.
I'm always ready to talk about
something. That happening. Yeah,
I know, it's just like so rude.
You have to actually read the materials to even go. You were so far behind in third place. They didn't even hand out a bronze. They just said, please go stand over there.
I don't even get a participation ribbon?
Nope. Out you get. Oscar, 30 seconds. Do what you will with them.
30 seconds. Oh, Lord.
What was the last movie you watched?
The last movie I watched. I don't even remember the name of it.
Have you seen Shang-Chi?
What the heck is that?
Oh, my goodness. When was the last time you came from out of your cave? What do you mean, what is Shang-Chi?
I only work, Marcus. Should I pass the time along to Susie?
True.
Or maybe
he's donating his time.
Maybe I'll donate the time to Susie. Maybe,
Susie.
It seems like she has something she wants to tell the listeners.
That was already 30 seconds, no?
Susie, you get 30 pity seconds from Oscar.
And Marcus, I promise to be ready for that next time.
No, please don't lie to me. No one's ever ready for it. I don't even know why we bother doing this. Susie, you got anything to say?
I don't want the pity seconds. It'll be the second time I'm getting pity seconds, and that's not
It is the second time,
I want to win on my own.
Trust me, it's not pity. I have nothing to say, so you're helping me out.
I went to a conference on Friday, so I'm totally going to take the 30 seconds, maybe 2 minutes instead of 30 seconds now.
Unbelievable.
And tell you that I went to this Netlix conference on Friday, and it was in person, and it was so great to be on a panel live with people there. The first speaker was a professor from Stanford, Michelle J. Gelfand, who talked about loose and tight cultures. It was really interesting to think about how structure and how different countries have been using this idea of structure, or like a little bit less what she calls loose, in dealing with the pandemic. I mean, she used tons of different business examples, but for me, that's what I came with. And that Canada is technically a loose culture, but we are so common good that we did well with COVID.
Very good. That's what we've got time for the Game of the Week. Congratulations to Oscar. He won this week's Game of the Week.
Thank
Susie
you, Marcus.
Did not.
Thank you for donating your time.
It's time now for working from somewhere. This is the part of the show where we talk about working from somewhere. Now that some of us are remote, some of us are hybrid, some of us still going back into the office. Where are you? Where are you in the world? This week we've got an article titled, "We'll Give You a Week Off. Please Don't Quit." It's an article by Tiffany Sue and Lauren Hirsch of the New York Times. Companies are trying to combat burnout from working remotely by offering more time off and other perks. The article points to one employee who quit her job in advertising that made her feel worn out to work for an e-commerce business that prioritized the mental well-being of its employees. The article lists a ton of examples of what companies are doing. One group of examples is giving people time off. Martin, the agency known for the Geico Gecko commercials, closed down for a full week around Labor Day. Getaway, a hospitality company, is replacing Labor Day with Labor Week. Love that idea. Social media management platform Hootsuite said in May that it would stop work for a week because it had noticed a rise in depression, anxiety, things like that as folks moved to remote. There was a student newspaper, University of South Carolina. They went dark for a week, publishing an editorial that said, "We're not okay." And also the ad industry apparently pushing for an industry-wide week off, according to Neil Arthur, the COO of Weeden & Kennedy. Another group of examples were extended breaks. So Hearst Magazines, LinkedIn, Twitch, dating app Bumble, financial software firm Intuit, others working on extended breaks. One ad agency gave employees 6 extra days of summer off this year, and Weeden & Kennedy offices around the world took a staggered weeks off. Another group of examples, the Deutsche LA ad agency banned meetings during certain hours. We talked about this in a previous segment, core hours, and plans to set aside a week off around Thanksgiving, calling it Recharge Week, Global Week of Rest, Self-Care Week, things like that. Citigroup experimenting with options like Zoom-free Fridays, and Group M blocking emails on weekends. So folks, some of your thoughts on some of these examples of helping people prevent burnout?
So I think that some of these ideas are great. if everybody in the company is following them at the same time, right? It's no point in giving me a week off, an extra week off, if the work is going to pile up or people are going to try and find time to make meetings and it's the only time. And now I feel like I'm missing out. So I think it has to all happen together. The one thing I would call out from a retailer perspective, though, is it's very difficult to do something for all retail associates because, as we know from the pandemic, most of them are essential and they work in a store, and we can't just close a store or close a warehouse or close a fulfillment center. And so I think the dichotomy of a corporate office versus all the other associates makes it a little bit more complicated for retailers.
Yeah, JPMorgan Chase, what they're doing, they're hiring more people to lighten the load of current employees. So arguably a more sustainable approach. And Hewlett-Packard Enterprise is giving employees free access to the Headspace meditation app and also offering new parents the option to work part-time for up to 3 years. Don't know what part-time is, but that's interesting. One of the issues here, folks, is I've been in the States maybe 8 years or so. So I come from a different kind of working culture, at least in the beginning of my career, the early part of it. So you guys would know this much more than me, but it seems as though folks were already working too much before the pandemic, which I worked here before the pandemic, but I've only had a small sample size to go off. Americans worked more than the average country according to the OECD. And then also America's less time off than others in most countries except Canada and Japan. And the US, which averages 13 days off a year, It can be lower, can be a bit higher, but can be lower. Workers get at least 20 paid vacation days. In France and Finland, they get 30. So you get an entire month off per year. That's according to a 20-something finance article by G.E. Miller. I remember when I first came to the States, actually I remember when I first entered the workforce in the UK, and I was given, it was 22 vacation days for the year in England. And my aunt, who was in New York, she had worked her way up over a 20-year career to 10.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
Just frightening.
Absurd.
At the same time, now
totally
I think
absurd.
the movement in the US is to unlimited paid time off. But there are weird ramifications, psychological ramifications. I'd almost rather be told. So me too, when I was at my previous company, I had worked my way up to almost 5 weeks off. And it is so much better to know that you have we rounded up to 5 weeks. I had a great boss. So it's better to know that you have the 5 weeks and you take them, you force yourself, versus when it's unlimited, you're like, oh, whatever. And then you never really take a lot of time off.
Yeah.
Susie mentioned the hiring thing, and I think, in theory, that's kind of what I came up with as well. And in theory, it should work. But, practicality, what's going to happen is, the company's going to take on more clients and more work, and because you hire more. And so I don't know if that will sort of give us a solution here. It's kind of sad to admit it. You know what I'm thinking? Long holidays and company breaks and things like that. What I miss the most is kind of like in-office perks, which perks can be something like, supplies and things like this.
Bagel
so
Fridays.
It's Bagel Fridays. So sad to, but like care packages. Can we have that? I know we have snacks and beverages here, but supplemental stuff. How can we transport that to everyone's home? That's kind of what I'm thinking. That would do something for me, but on top of maybe some holiday breaks.
Yeah. Absolutely, mate. And there is so many perks that could be offered to help with burnout, whether that's a home cleaning service, whether that is some kind of subscription box service. You get like some snacks during the day, so you don't have to go out and worry about getting something to eat. It could be coffee gift cards so that you worry a little bit less about money, about finances, about spending that money on coffee that you would normally get free in the office. So lots of things companies could do. People keep framing burnout as an individual problem, says Christina Maslach, an emerita professor of psychology at the University of California, Berkeley, who has spent much of her career studying occupational burnout. If you're really going to try and make a dent in the problem and get to a better place, you're going to have to not just focus on people and fix them, you have to focus on the job conditions and fix those as well. Rahul, any parting thoughts? How's burnout working out for you, and how could you see companies fixing it?
I mean, I think you raised an interesting point with that last piece of information. I think at some point in the 20th century, this idea that technology would result in productivity gains would result in like more leisure time. So we would work 4-hour work weeks or something like that. That hasn't come to fruition. We're all dealing with the reality of probably more increased time spent working. And everybody's feeling that, I think, a lot more strongly during the pandemic, obviously. And then in concert with that, it just reminds me of a columnist who writes on work issues for The New Yorker, whose name I forget, but he talked about how this idea of productivity used to be one that lay with the institution. We would create these gains in productivity through systemic changes. Now I think the onus has shifted to the individual. You're always trying to figure out a productivity hack, like, can I use this thing? Or maybe I should download this new thing on this extension on Chrome that'll save me some time or whatever. And it does create, I think, a more stressful situation for the individual who's trying to find that balance between work and non-work life.
A great place to leave that segment. It's time now for dinner party data. Part of the show where we tell you about the most interesting thing that we've learned this week. We start with Oscar because he won this week's Game of the Week. Oscar, what do you have for us?
Awesome. So I was wondering, anyone here a big fan of Nutella?
Oh, yeah. Hello.
Of course, right?
I eat it daily.
Thing. Do you?
I have a it's a sickness.
I'm sure. It's not the best for you, but it's delicious.
It's not ideal. It's not vegetables. No offense, Nutella, but it's not vegetables, but it feels good.
Leave the vegetables for dinner or something, right? Nutella's breakfast, lunch, amazing. But so Nutella, when I was a kid, I was a huge fan of it. Then I kind of wasn't on Nutella much, into my 20s, but I've kind of been back on it. I know. Marcus is shaking his head here. Kind of back on it. I forgot how much I loved it. You know what I realized? I didn't know what Nutella was made out of. I didn't know what it was.
Please don't tell us. Don't ruin this for me.
Well, not too much. Don't worry. You're still going to want it. Right. But what I looked into it because, for this segment, and what I found is that 1 in 4 of every hazelnuts on this planet make their way to Ferrero company who creates Nutella. 1 in 4 of every hazelnut on the planet, because it's mainly a hazelnut product. So some of the hazelnuts probably go to other Ferrero products, but it's mainly Nutella. So, it talks to how popular it is, and it's just so delicious. But a couple more things. It's become so popular of a brand that it's single-handedly leading to research and development on how to combat food shortages, because people have realized, we might need more hazelnuts, and this could be a problem with other popular products. So the demand for hazelnuts has grown so much that universities are trying to grow them in labs to fight against global shortages. And of course, to make sure that we will always have Nutella in our kitchen cabinets.
Thank goodness. Thank God. Thank goodness the universities are working on the important stuff. Like making sure I don't run out of Nutella, because I'll lose it. I will lose my mind if that happens.
Same
Well,
here.
would you buy a store brand?
Ugh.
No.
Yuck.
No, it's not the same. I've tried it. Not the same.
It's not the same. Very good. Very good, Oscar. Let's go, Rahul. Susie has been talking up dinner party data
so much pressure.
for light years. So we'll save the best potentially till last. Rahul, what you got?
Susie's headlining. My data comes courtesy of Scott Galloway, who's a marketing professor at NYU and also the founder of Section 4. And he spells out a scenario that American men face where their no sex rate is increasing at the same time that college enrollment is decreasing. So the no sex rate was around 28% of 18 to 30-year-olds polled. So they hadn't had sex in the past year, in I think around 2019. And at the same time as this trend of no sex is going up, the enrollment rates in colleges have declined. His thesis is really that we're creating a scenario where men in particular in the U.S. are going to have diminished earnings potential, and as a result are becoming less attractive to potential mates. And the conclusion of this sort of is that we're creating a new class of undersexed, underemployed, under-earning men. And where are they all going to go? They're going to head online and get angry about things.
No.
It's a pretty dim outlook,
world.
but I did think that his thesis was interesting in terms of looking at these like macro trends and like how does he think it's going to affect our culture moving forward.
Men are we're becoming less attractive. Oh,
It sounds
there's
like
no
it's
hope.
a good screenplay for like a Netflix, film or something.
Yeah.
we should make something.
Did you just pitch us a screenplay?
I think I did.
Unbelievable.
Don't steal it though. That was my idea.
I'm taking it. Wait, say it again. Let me write this down. Very good. Very good. Susie.
I can't go next.
I mean, maybe there's a drum roll happening right now. Maybe there's not.
I can't
But
top
there probably
this.
is.
I can't top.
Here we go.
Okay.
What you got, Susie?
It's a bit complicated, but it really is party data in that on Friday at the conference, a gentleman took a few of us from the hotel to the conference space.
How complicated?
Wait, I just wanted to give you the context for one quick second.
Okay. Everyone's favorite dinner party data is the one that makes them go, huh?
Wait, no, I'm just giving you the context as to why it
Okay.
really is dinner party data.
Okay.
And
Give
now
it to us like it's the setup for a joke.
Yes, that's what I'm doing. So, so everybody knows now, thanks to Marcus, how uncompetitive I am and unprepared
she's the
for
most.
podcasts. Anyways, so nobody was really talking a lot in the car. So I started asking about sports because I didn't know what else to talk about. And then I heard more about cricket. So here is my party data. And I'm very excited because as we all know, Marcus is from England. Do we all?
Cricket,
yes.
did you say?
Do we know who invented cricket?
Not a popular man
No idea.
or woman.
Benjamin Cricket.
Oh, sorry. I meant like what country?
Oh.
The English,
sir.
Yes,
British.
correct.
Yes.
The British invented it in the
Yes.
late 16th century.
Why'd you have to remind me of that?
Because it
What were we
gets better. So,
Does it?
Yes, the British invented cricket.
Still
And
waiting
it
for it
comes
to get
in
better.
many,
Cricket.
many different forms. But in 1975, they designed their own Cricket World Cup that is every 4 years. So there have
Sorry
been
about that, world.
12 cups that have happened. And I would like for everybody to guess how many has England won? The originator, the inventor of the sport, who has been playing for centuries. How many cups have they won?
It's below 1.
Must be 0, huh? You're coming for Marcus here.
It's one. They won the last one in 2019. They won. That was their first win.
Wow.
Why would you
That
bring
is
this up?
weird. And who?
You said
who's
it was
won-
gonna be
who's
good.
won? Yeah.
Australia. I knew you were going to ask me that question. Australia has won 5. And
We don't have to talk about that right now, okay? We don't have to talk about how much other countries have won who didn't invent the game, how many World Cups other countries have won who didn't invent soccer. What are we doing right now? What's happening?
I was
Am I being
bringing
punked?
real
This is
data, real party car data to the table.
I'm furious.
I liked it. I don't know if
I
I'll
didn't.
watch cricket, but that was
No one will.
It's a very
It's the
complicated
worst.
game.
It's the worst game.
I've had
it's
a
the
few
worst game.
tutorials on it. It's actually very complicated.
Consider yourselves lucky you didn't have to play it in school, okay?
Did you
It's
have
the
to play in
worst.
school?
I don't want to talk about it. Okay, I've just gotten over it. Okay, very good. Very good. I've got 2 for you real quick before we say goodbye for the week. The first one is I've got some data for you on American garages. Garages. How do you say it? A garage?
Garage.
The garages. I've got some data on that for you. 2015, bit dated. Homeowner survey from Gladiator Garage Works. Ooh. So, first, a couple of data points are about how disorganized garages are. For around a quarter of Americans, the garage is so unorganized it can't even fit one car. Despite this, 3/4 of homeowners say that parking is the most important function of their garage. The second data point, 1/5 of homeowners have actually gotten into an argument with their spouse about the organizational state of their garage. 30% keep the garage shut so neighbors don't see the mess. And 34% don't know what's stored in their own garage. Well, who doesn't know what's in their own home? Could be anything in there.
This is my parents.
Saw an alligator the other day.
I've seen it.
I've got some more for you. Garage significance. When buying a home, 80% of buyers consider the garage when they're trying to determine which home to purchase. A 2-car garage in an average size home is about 13 to 15% of the home's overall square footage, and 55% of folks use the garage as the main entryway in their home. I think that's so cool. That's such an American thing, and I love it the most. How genius is that? You'll never get wet. You'll never get rained on. It's brilliant.
It's true. It is.
Straight in. And then finally, garage use. A majority of people use their garage for parking the car and household storage, mainly storage. But 27% of people use garage for hobbies, 23% use it to work on cars, 19% to do projects such as woodworking, carpentry, and 13% use it as an area for exercise or sports. Over half of Americans, 55%, spend 1 to 2 hours a week in the garage doing hobbies and activities, according to Impulse Research. And 5 of the biggest US companies were started in a garage. Can you name them?
I know
Microsoft? Oh, no, wait.
Yeah, Microsoft,
Microsoft, Apple? Is that
Oh, wait. Microsoft's not on my list. It could be. It's a very limited list. I shouldn't have made this a question. Yeah, probably lots. You know what? Forget it. They're none of these ones that you're saying.
Bands,
technically, could you say Ford because the first car, once it was completed, the building by default became a garage?
Yeah, that's also true. Yeah. Forget the question. It was a dumb question. None of those are on my list. Apple, Amazon, Disney, Google, and Harley Davidson. Let's move on. Next stop, final dinner party data. Thing I have for you today. Humans are born with the knowledge that sharing really is caring. Helping other people is part of human nature, and the purity of children proves it. If you drop something in front of a child and pretend you can't get it, it's lazy, first of all, but the child will almost always pick it up for you. For instance, but sharing is also a major part of it. In one experiment, researchers placed children in a room with 2 food trays. Once the lids were lifted, one was revealed to have a sandwich on it, the other was totally empty, and every single time the experiment was repeated, the child who ended up with the sandwich decided to share it. Kids are amazing, and then we ruin them. They become adults. That's all we've got time for this week's episode. Thank you so much to my guests. Thank you to Susie.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Oscar.
Thanks, Marcus.
And thank you to Rahul.
Always a pleasure.
Yes, sir. Thank you to Victoria. She edits the show. Thanks to everyone listening. To ask us questions, say hi. podcast@emarketer.com is how you can get in touch. We'll see you guys on Monday, hopefully, for the Behind the Numbers Daily, the eMarketer podcast made possible by New Star. Happy weekends. Victoria, I forgot to tell you, I had my first WAWA experience.
Oh, I love WAWA.
WAWA is what every gas station wished it could be. It's perfect. Oh, they do over-the-counter food. Don't think they don't have hot food. Oh, they do.
And the food's great.
They have 20 different types of half and half. Perfectly stocked. Oh, it was just a fun place to be. I hung out there for about 2 hours.
I didn't know you can drive, Marcus.
What are you doing right now? What do you mean you didn't know I could drive?
I didn't think you
drove. You think I walked to Austin?
I thought you flew there. You pretended like the airline outages don't matter. You waited until it was fine, and then you got on a flight.
I can drive. I drove all the way here. I would have preferred to ride a horse. I think that's so cool. I'm actually thinking about buying one. Now I'm down here, but I did drive. Yeah, I can do that.
Oh, good.